College football nerds here talking kind of part two of our discussion on LSU and Ed Orgeron, and we want to go through the list of maybe potential candidates or candidates that we think would be a good fit, but we want to remind y'all, because it's kind of like a prediction of a game. Let us know in the comments who you think should be the candidate. Give us a reasonable candidate that you think would go there, and then maybe a dream candidate that probably won't go there. Okay, Josh, I'm going through this list. There's a list of candidates on Tiger Droppings. That's right, y'all. We read Tiger Droppings in SEC Rant, which means you should probably link our stuff there. We'd love that to happen. And they've got their list runs the gamut as they kind of do. At first, Josh, I want to kind of talk about the ones that maybe would be a great fit there, but they would never, they probably wouldn't touch LSU organizationally. And to me, the two that jump out are Hugh Freeze and Lane Kiffin. Now, I think both of these coaches would be absolutely deadly there, but aren't these coaches kind of what represent what LSU needs to get away from and wash the Ed O sort of session off of them?
Two different problems, but yeah, there's issues with both of them. First, Hugh Freeze is still toxic. Liberty hired him as a head coach when a lot of people wouldn't touch him. There was a lot of rumor that Alabama wanted to hire him as an offensive coordinator and that he was blocked before he took that job at Liberty. And there's a lot more going on at LSU than just letting go Ed Orgeron and trying to turn around the player base. Because, yeah, that's a problem. And Hugh Freeze had an issue where he lost the team in his final days at Ole Miss. I think people kind of forget that aspect of it. But this is a guy that was fired because he was calling escorts on a university-issued phone. LSU is under Title IX investigations. LSU is under NCAA investigations. Hugh Freeze committed NCAA violations while at Ole Miss. I don't think LSU, with everything going on administratively, can or will touch him. And I'm not sure the SEC front office would allow anyone in the SEC to hire him, even if you wanted to. So he's just kind of off the board. And then Kiffin is an offensive genius, flat out. He's matured tremendously. He's a better head coach than he was before. But the problem with him is you've got a guy that has not shown the ability over time to hold a program together administratively. He's not shown the ability to make sure he recruits and develops players with depth, to make sure he keeps buy-in in the program, he keeps the guys on the right track, doing the right thing. He's been successful now a year and a half in at Ole Miss. Now he's got a Heisman caliber quarterback. You can talk about whether that's a pro for Kiffin, which I think it is, that because Corral wasn't the same guy before he was there, or is that something he just walked into? But when you consider that LSU's problem right now, to a large extent, is buy-in and administrative functioning, I think it makes it really hard to bring in a coach that doesn't have a great track record in that particular area.
And there's other coaches who are, I think, really good, but maybe a little bit too early. Mel Tucker is going to be a hot name this year. He might even fall into the Southern Cal job, which I don't think is as good of a job as LSU. And there's a lot of rumor. Josh Pate touched on this, and it makes a lot of sense that all the agents of all the top potential coaches were waiting for this job to open up, to not only, have a shot at the better job, but to use it as leverage for USC. I think Mel Tucker is a guy that's probably going to get that next tier job, although Michigan State has got a pretty good deal going on up there. But what about some of these other guys, Josh, like Matt Campbell, Luke Fickell, guys that have been mentioned for years for the next, even let's throw Cristobal in there. Do those feel like one of those would be a top first pick for LSU, or are those also guys that we always hear about, but really LSU wouldn't pull the trigger on them?
Every one of these coaches has to be evaluated individually. One of the things I always hate is you just say, oh, here's this group of coaches. What do we think of the group? I mean, every coach is different. Matt Campbell in particular, if you look at his coaching tree, he was Bowling Green, Mount Union, Bowling Green, Toledo, Iowa State. The problem with Campbell is he has never shown the ability to recruit. I think right now, we looked this up, and I don't have the number in front of me, but they're like, the 60s in recruiting? He's had a lot of success at Iowa State. He had 8-win seasons, 2017, 2018, 9-win season in 2020. it has not in any way translated into elevating the overall talent level of the program. Yes, they have a few NFL caliber guys this year. They're older players, but they're going to cycle out, and there's no indication that they've managed to recruit such that they have high-level athletes behind them to take them to yet another level. It seems like they're stuck in a 9-win ceiling. I don't think that's the guy you necessarily want at LSU. He's got no experience running a P5 program, and this is something you'll hear from me as a theme. I do not like ever hiring a P5 head coach at a major program that does not have some level of significant coaching experience and exposure to how to run a P5 program, because so much about being a head coach is building this recruiting apparatus, tutoring apparatus, nutrition, players meetings, all that junk. That's a lot of the job. And Campbell, as good as he is, doesn't have experience with that. The more interesting one to me is the other one you named, and that's Luke Fickell. Unlike Campbell, Luke Fickell does have exposure to that. And I think, to me, Luke Fickell is almost your home run reasonable hire. Fickell was at Ohio State for several years. He knows how you run a major program. He was a co-defensive coordinator for 5 years at Ohio State. He knows how to recruit. And you bring a guy in with a tough-nosed personality, or a guy that's known as having being a tough coach that builds a program by building strength of character, and you fix a lot of the stuff that Ed Orgeron does. I mean, to your point, you want the boring, angry guy, and that's what Fickell is. Only Fickell has experience with championship-level programs, and so he checks, in my view, every box from what you need at LSU. I think Fickell is, in my view, the best reasonable candidate for this position.
And just real quick, if Fickell, somebody who's been exposed to high-level programs, is up on the list, shouldn't Billy Napier also be on that list?
Yeah, Billy Napier is an interesting one, and I think he is pretty high on it. I know a lot of LSU fans are aware of him because he's Louisiana, but he's an offensive coordinator at Clemson for a bit. It didn't really work out, but he was really young. But he's bounced around a lot of places, and spent time at Alabama as a receivers coach. Was at Arizona State. So he's a guy that has the pedigree. He's had the success at Louisiana. He's built some connections in Louisiana. I know he's not coaching at an LSU level, so he's not recruiting in an LSU level, but you still build connections with high school coaches, and he's done that because they still are recruiting those same programs. You just maybe going to get a slightly better player from the same school you already have a relationship with. So Billy Napier makes a lot of sense. My concern with Bill Napier is he's in your 4th year as a head coach. He's been really successful in Louisiana, but it was mainly that last year that was a COVID year, and I'm not sure how much of that was a flash in the pan. I don't think LSU fans would be very excited about that hire. I think he could be rather successful, but I think he would be viewed as a guy that would make you in the conversation for a conference title most years. I don't think most people would view him as a guy that potentially elevates you as a constant playoff contender at the end of the season.
I'm going to touch on a few that I think they're long shots on this list, but I don't think they're even in the stratosphere of being considered. James Franklin, Lincoln Riley, for whatever reason, his name is bouncing around. I don't understand why Lincoln Riley would go from Oklahoma, where he's got a pretty easy path to the playoffs now and is coming into the SEC, but he's got his own sort of recruiting region. To me, there's no benefit there for going to LSU. That might offend some LSU fans, and I know LSU has its lock on that state of Louisiana, but in terms of recruiting, but I don't see why Lincoln Riley leaves Oklahoma to go anywhere but the NFL, and he feels like an NFL guy to me. James Franklin's not leaving. He's another one. I don't think he's leaving Penn State. Penn State, I would. It's the Urban Meyer thing. Urban Meyer went to Ohio State and saw that his first year, he went 12-0. They were on probation. He went 12-0. I think they played one ranked team. Penn State, you can kind of work something out like that in the Big Ten, although it's in a tougher division. Jimbo Fisher's not coming to LSU. I'm not sure that you want him. The big one that LSU fans are going to talk about, Josh, and I'll let you touch on this a little bit, Joe Brady. I might eat my words here, but Josh, Joe Brady's not coming to LSU.
The reality for most of the names you just named are they're at Tier 1 programs, meaning a top 15 program. Historically, coaches from top 15 programs that are not on probation do not leave for any other program, period. If they are great coaches, they make that team into a championship caliber team. Otherwise, they coach there until they're let go. It just doesn't happen. The most you're going to end up with is being flirted with to get that guy a raise at his current program. Joe Brady is unique because he's at the Carolina Panthers and he's an offensive coordinator. He's not a head coach. The problem with Brady, I think, is twofold. One, a lot of people really prefer to be in the pros because there's a lot less stuff you have to do. I think he likes coaching football. I think he's a great offensive mind. And if you're in the pros, you can just do that all day. You don't have to deal with tutors. You don't have to deal with recruiting. You can just be a football coach. And I think you have to bear in mind with Brady, he has a lot of the same problems we were talking about earlier with his exposure level, right? It was William and Mary. He was a grad assistant at Penn State for a couple years. Then he was 2 years at the Saints before he goes 1 year at LSU and then right back into the pros. So in the past 5 years, he spent 1 year in the college game. His experience, at least meaningful experience, has actually been as a pro coach. I think he's going to take the pro track. I think he's aware if he continues to be successful, he will be considered for a head coaching position in the NFL. And most people will tell you that an NFL head coaching position is just preferable to a college one. It's an easier, lower stress job. So I don't think Joe Brady is very likely to make the switch back to the college game. Could be wrong, but it seems like a weird fit for him, and I can't see any reason why he'd want to do it.
And I'm just remembering now, or thinking that we've got a lot of Big Ten fans here that are probably going to be upset about what I said about Franklin, but I think if we're being honest with ourselves, your path to a national championship at Penn State is going to be easier than it is in the SEC West. It just is. You have to beat. I mean, I know you're not going to be able to recruit maybe as well, but you have to beat Ohio State to get to the playoffs. You're going to have to beat 2 Ohio States and some other like pretty good 10-win type teams on the way to the playoffs in that.
Yeah, and I almost commented on this earlier. Like, I think you're going to get a lot of pushback from people noting LSU has some of, if not the most fertile, dedicated recruiting ground in the country to build a program, and that's really attractive to a lot of people. They have a lot of financial resources. And, I mean, Penn State's schedule is by no means a cakewalk, but I think to your point, playing Alabama, Auburn, Arkansas, Ole Miss now with Kiffin, having to face Georgia, Florida,
Oklahoma, Texas,
Florida every year, A&M every year. Then you got to face the East champion, and you're about to have to face Oklahoma and Texas. That's a lot, man. I mean, it's a lot because Alabama is one of your yearly opponents among a lot of other top 15 teams. But the biggest thing I would say is I don't know how much some coaches really consider that path and the ease of the path, and some coaches just consider the size of the program and their ability to build a good team. And I think it really depends on the personality of the individual coach, how much you can talk about they want a challenge, but how much they want a place where they're going to win a lot because of the ease of it, and how much they want a place where they can get the best players possible.
Well, and it's really to your other point, though. It's like we're not talking about having to build up a program at, say, Michigan State to win a national championship. We're talking about Penn State. So he's already at a top program. He might get a little bit more going to LSU, but not enough. So I didn't mean to offend anybody, but I don't think somebody's leaving. I don't think somebody's leaving Penn State to go to LSU. Like I don't. Not with the current landscape as it is, even with the recruiting benefit.
Let me put it this way: if you're Lincoln Riley and you're at Oklahoma, what seems easier for you? Staying at Oklahoma and recruiting players with the team that you've already built and gotten mostly into place to fit the couple missing pieces to win your semifinal playoff game, or going to a completely different school that had a 500 record last year with a coach that left the roster with a ton of holes and like 60 scholarship players available and rebuilding that program from scratch? I mean,
right.
What sounds easier to you? You're not going to leave an established situation. It doesn't happen. I can't see it happening. I know LSU has a lot of money. These other programs also have a lot of money. You always end up getting an up-and-comer from the G5 ranks, or at least a low-level P5. It's just extremely rare to be able to hire somebody at one of those kinds of programs.
And I do wonder with LSU's like state and university financial situation and having to pay buyouts here, how much stomach they have for paying a top salary. They probably do. It's a football crazy part of the world, but that is something to consider. All right. So we don't make this too long. I want to touch on, maybe you pick two, I'll pick two reasonable candidates that would be good hires for LSU that they should be excited about, that are within striking distance for them. I've got two. One is Dave Aranda, who unlike Brady, I think Aranda is a college guy. He has proven himself to be able to build. Like, one of the things we were questioning about Aranda was when he leaves for a head coaching job after being the best defensive coordinator in college football, which I still think he was at the time, can he do the program building things, the administrative things? And I think so far it's proven that he can. And I think he would be well loved. I think he would be a home run hire, just like I thought Sark was a home run hire in Texas. The other one for me is Billy Napier. I don't think he would be as home run to the LSU fans, but I'm super high on him, and I think that I think he's going to be a good hire. I would take him over Matt Campbell all day, every day. Give me your two.
My first call is going to be Luke Fickell, and I already said that. I think he checks all the boxes you want. And a lot of people are saying, oh, he's too tied to Ohio State. I keep hearing people saying he's waiting for that job to open.
Ryan Day's doing all right there.
Yeah, like Ryan Day is not young, not an old guy, and he's doing pretty well. So I'm not sure when you think that Luke Fickell is going to get that job. The biggest danger is that he may be the number one guy at USC. I actually agree with you on Aranda. I think you get a guy in that had years and years of connections recruiting in that area. He knows the administration. He knows the staff. He can kind of pick things up, clean up stuff that he doesn't like. And I honestly have to think that he was running a lot of the show behind the scenes when they won a championship, when they were a really good program and they had a great defense. And so I think he could turn that culture around. Billy Napier, I don't know, I just call it gut, but I have that gut feeling that he's going to be one of those guys like the McElwain as a head coach who did pretty well at Colorado State and then seemed really in over his head at a P5. It just, to me, he doesn't seem to have that personality presence. And I think Aranda and Fickell have that where Napier doesn't.
All right, y'all, let us know in the comments who you think would be your reasonable good hire, and then who's your stretch home run hire for LSU. Lamar, we're waiting for your comment. I'm sure you will be one of the first. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week. God bless.